To survive in this crazy world, tough decisions have to be made every single day. And whether at work or in the convenience store on the way home, we often find ourselves second-guessing the choices we've already made, especially when these choices have resulted in some far-reaching consequences we never thought through in the first place. But regardless of what it is, you can be sure that the decision you made is far less idiotic than the choices that have been made by other people who have become famous for them. So, if you're feeling down because of one of your decisions, or just want to take a look at some of the stupid choices humanity has made over the past couple of years, you've come to the right place, as we're about to explore some of the worst decisions ever made by people in the business world. Don't move a muscle, as things are about to get embarrassing. Before we get into the video, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything we post. Mars passing up on free publicity. The vast majority of us know about Mars Incorporated for the numerous confectionery items we buy from time to time, ranging from Milky Way bars to Twix. But by far, one of their most popular items just has to be M&Ms, which go great with hot popcorn, by the way. So feel free to try that next time you sit down and watch a movie. Speaking of, back in 1981, Amblin Productions actually called Mars with a proposition. The studio suggested that Mars promote their film on the chocolate sweets packaging, and in return, the characters on the film would be munching on M&Ms all day long. Mars gave Amblin Productions a straight-up no, which resulted in the company using Reese's Pieces instead. Well, this ended up being a terrible business decision for Mars, as the movie in question, Steven Spielberg's Extraterrestrial, grossed at nearly $800 million en route to becoming one of the most important classics in all of film history. And unsurprisingly, this resulted in a 65% jump in sales of Reese's Pieces in the months after the film had been released, showing Mars Incorporated just what they had missed out on by refusing to take the deal. Some experts have even suggested that this specific product placement is what made it possible for the Hershey Company to become the king of the chocolate industry within the United States. Imagine how the CEO of Mars Incorporated must have felt after losing their lead in the industry because of one stupid decision. We would be kicking ourselves for sure. No thank you to Monday Night Football. In the late 1960s, only one thing was true about all Americans, which is that they absolutely lived for baseball. In fact, the love of the game was so large that nobody in the sporting industry thought that anything else would knock it off its podium. So when Commissioner Pete Rozelle approached both NBC and CBS to see if they wanted to sign a contract to have Monday Night Football put on the air, the channel managers laughed at him and showed him the door. Who would watch football while the big game was on, right? And what was the point of sacrificing a series like the Doris Day Show in return for a show about football? Well, unfortunately for both NBC and CBS, football caught on and shortly became America's biggest passion, leaving baseball in the lurch. Worse yet, Monday Night Football became one of the longest-running and highest-rated television shows of all time. In fact, to keep the rights to itself, ESPN pays close to $2 billion per year, with the broadcaster bringing in profits 10 times more than that because of the show. Now that's a decision someone could have been fired over. Goodbye, Motorola. Those of us born before the era of smartphones will remember a couple of cell phone manufacturers besides Apple, Samsung, and Huawei, who flooded the market with great designs and had customers foaming at the mouth to get their hands on them. The Motorola Razr, for example, was heralded as one of the greatest cell phone designs of all time, looking like something that was taken directly from the set of Star Trek and worked like a charm. The release of this piece of intelligent machinery made Motorola the company to beat in the world of cell phones. But they dropped the ball by concentrating a little too long on the looks of their first smartphone, causing it to be beat out by both iPhone and BlackBerry. Because of this concentration on looks over and above customer experience, as accompanied by the delayed release of their smartphone on the market, Motorola's shares fell by a whopping 90% between October 2006 and March 2009, equating to a loss of over $4.3 billion. This meant that by January of 2011, the motto of "Hello Moto" was no longer being heard, with the company closing its doors shortly after. The simple decision to delay to ensure an attractive phone essentially killed a company that had been the leader of technological innovations for over 8 decades. And while Motorola Mobility is now owned by Lenovo, following their purchase from Google in 2014, we doubt the company will come back to the smartphone scene anytime soon. Let's face it, there's no beating the monopoly Apple, Samsung, and Huawei have. Sorry, Moto, we We guess this is goodbye forever. The pitching of The Cosby Show. Since ABC was the network that finally decided to pick up Monday Night Football for the first time, it's clear that whoever was in charge of making decisions knew what they were doing. But the network was unfortunately still only third in the rankings and needed a boost of viewership if they ever wanted to run with the big boys. But when The Cosby Show was pitched to them, the entertainment division president didn't see what the fuss was about and decided to pass up on the rights. Granted, The Cosby Show hasn't exactly aged well after the world became aware of the monster that Bill Cosby actually was throughout the years, but it wasn't for this reason that they refused to air it. In fact, the president of the network claimed that they were neither given the pilot or script of the show by Cosby, and for that reason, rejected the idea. That being said, most agree that this was nothing but a lie to cover the terrible mistake the network had made by rejecting the idea. As who pitches a show without even first having a script at the ready? Suffice it to say, The Cosby Show soared to popularity, ranking at number 3 in the Nielsen ratings, and then, for the next 5 seasons, took the number 1 spot without any close contenders. Accepting the show on their own network, NBC was catapulted to the spot of most watched network, with the show bringing in around 30 million views per night. In other words, it looks like the president of ABC was wrong for calling comedy on network television dead at the time, and more than likely lost his edge because of this horrible mistake of his. The rejection of the Beatles. By far one of the most beloved bands of a generation, the music from the Beatles is still played to this day at everything from festivals to bar crawls, gathering people in groups to sing along to the tune of fantastic relics like Here Comes the Sun and Hey Jude. But did you know that when the Beatles first auditioned at London's Decca Records, before they had made a name for themselves, the executive in charge of talent said that their sound was not something the listeners would want to hear. In fact, he ended up referring to them as a cover of another popular band at the time, which went by the name of The Shadows. In the stead of the Beatles, the executive in question signed Brian Poole and the Tremolos, who the vast majority of the population have still to this day never heard of. Luckily for everyone involved, however, Brian Epstein decided to give the Beatles a chance, who went on to become the best-selling band in all of musical history. We can even go as far as to say that the incredible group started a revolution that changed pop culture forever. Unfortunately for Decca Records, the company had just missed out on the greatest financial opportunity of their lifetime, and all because of a talent executive who clearly had a poor taste in music. Now that is disappointing. Labeling the telephone as a novelty item. Back in 1876, there was really only one way to have a direct conversation with a friend or family member. Sure, you could always write them a letter, but the conversation would be put on hold when waiting for the postal services to deliver the written message. So when the idea of the telegraph was patented and achieved, people were incredibly excited, with the piece of technology being the most advanced piece of communication tech available at the time. But regardless of how important this step was to the future we currently live in, the Western Union Company not only rejected the patent for what would nowadays be around $2 million, but outright dismissed it. In fact, the company president apparently laughed the idea off and wrote personally to Alexander Graham Bell, asking what someone could possibly do with an electrical novelty toy like the one he was trying to sell to the company. With absolutely no commercial possibilities, the president denied Bell's invention and moved on as if nothing had happened. Around 2 years later, however, Alexander Graham Bell improved the idea to create the telephone, which went on to become an item found within next to every household on the block. And if you really think about it, it was the concretization of this invention that really pushed humanity to the next level of technological advancement. So what did William Orton, the president of the company, do after hearing about Bell's success? Well, he unsuccessfully challenged all of Bell's patents and cried himself to sleep every night for missing out on the greatest invention of the time. Quite a lot of fuss over a novelty toy, right? The mistake of 20th Century Fox. And last but not least, we turn to 20th Century Fox, who is still to this day paying for the bad decision they made back in 1977. Although merchandising wasn't exactly big around the time of the release of Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope, Fox got George Lucas to take a pay cut of $20,000 in exchange for all the merchandising rights in Star Wars, along with the sequels that would spring up thereafter. But, as you all know, Star Wars then went on to become one of the biggest franchises in the history of the film industry, spawning a number of movies, series, specials, and video games. For giving the rights to George Lucas for just $20,000, 20th Century Fox essentially missed out on earning meaning billions of dollars, with sources now confirming that George Lucas himself currently stands at a net worth of around $5.2 billion. Just like that, Fox missed out on being able to capitalize on Baby Yoda. So what do you think was the worst decision on our list? Feel free to let us know in the comments section down below.